and Dr. Bedell's listening and learning meetings. Most recently, Jessie took the lead in coordinating our strategic plan process. That includes facilitating meetings with internal and external stakeholders to gauge our progress towards achieving the goals outlined in the plan. Jessie is always providing outstanding and timely customer service. He is also known for his extremely dry sense of humor and his love of worksheets. Jessie, thank you for your outstanding service to Kansas City Public Schools. Our next terrific teammate is Diane Mora of East High School. Ms. Mora, please join us on stage. Our Department of Communications put together a special video for this portion of the presentation, which we will play at this time. We're getting the sound taken care of right now.
Friendships across communities, and bringing my kids here to experience, have another perspective of high school, so that as they grow up and mature, they have a sense of what they can advocate for in their own lives, what might be important to them later. The whole journey started with Liberty North students coming to visit at East High School, and they read the life stories of our students and asked them a lot of questions, and that's where the friendships really started building. And it was really interesting to see the kids come together. The perspective from my students at East High School after meeting the Liberty North students was, wow, they're so big and so tall, and they're younger than us in some cases. They also remarked on how much the students from Liberty North, how much they listened, and how deeply they read their stories. The overall goal really has been to step outside of our boundaries that we either impose on ourselves or that are sometimes framed for us. And that, I think, works on both sides of this friendship that we're building here. And just to see people as people, and I'm guilty of it too, walk around with stereotypes in our heads. And until we actually meet each other and shake hands, those walls don't come down.
Ms. Mora, thank you so much. Okay, now at this time, I'm going to pass the mic over to Family and Community Engagement Manager Samara Crawford Herrera, who will join me to introduce our community champions. Ms. Crawford Herrera.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weichel. Good evening, President Robinson, Board, Dr. Bedell, Cabinet, and community members. It is my extreme pleasure to provide some information about tonight's Community Champion awardee, Mr. Maurice Eric Person of KC Aquaponics. Kansas City Aquaponics has a mission to help others understand how to approach aquaponics using a DIY method and obtain knowledge through community building and educational projects. Here is a snapshot of how Mr. Person and KC Aquaponics lives out that mission here at East High School.
Learn how to occupy a greenhouse and utilize it to the fullest potential. My name is Eric Person. I'm the owner of Kansas City Aquaponics, and I work with East High School and their agriculture program. Currently, we are in the East Greenhouse. This is one of 3 greenhouses at East High School. Basically help them reboot the agriculture program. My relationship with them is whatever I do in here that not only involves aquaponics, but we do traditional soil gardening and we do compost tea gardening. I just kind of introduce the kids to that and give them kind of free access, if you will, to the information on what I'm doing as well as the greenhouse, and then help them do things outside that they're doing. So Kansas City Aquaponics has technically been around for about 3 years. The business started out of my home with an idea of trying to teach people how to do aquaponics from an ideology of do-it-yourself, finding things like tubs or repurposing fish tanks that you can find at a garage sale, and trying to teach people how to put those things together to grow food was something that I focused on, as well as traditional gardening. And then the methodology sort of shifted more from growing fish, because aquaponics uses fish waste to grow plants, to focus on just growing plants and understanding the biology with the water. But I've been doing aquaponics for about 6 years. Also, this vision came to me while I was up late trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I guess, career-wise in my life, and was watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos on different things, do-it-yourself and sustainability. I was doing research on tomatoes, on how to keep nitrogen, because I had a huge problem with nitrogen on my soil at the time. I didn't know it, so I was growing these huge tomatoes. They would get big, but they would stay green. Doing research on trying to keep things like petroleum-based product out of my garden, because a lot of plastics that you use leak petroleum or PCBs. And so came across things like aquaponic tables, which are plastics that don't necessarily degrade in the sun or the natural environment. And I was like, what's aquaponics? And so also came across wicking beds, which in this bed, there's rock at the bottom and soil, but the idea is that you fill the water in one spot, the water wicks up. That gave me the idea of just sort of combining the two, and then I just started doing research and watching every YouTube video on the line. Being here at the school, it allows me to hold workshops, like the one we're having today is a seed workshop, as well as how to do aquaponics. Outside of the school, I run Kansas City Aquaponics, not only commercial but residential, information and do-it-yourself consultation.
Vice Principal Benjamin Richardson, in his nomination of Mr. Person, noted that Mr. Person spends roughly 3 hours every week as an unpaid volunteer with East High School students. He helps to maintain their aquaponic system, orchards, and raised beds. He works alongside Andrew Killen and Zach McCullough to make East High School Agricultural Career Pathway one of the strongest agricultural programs in the state. Mr. Person, if you will join us on the stage this evening, we are excited to award you our Community Champion. Thank you so much for all this.
Thank you again. Thank you again to all of our Scholar Superstars, terrific teammates, and community champions. That concludes our portion of the presentation. Please welcome Principal of East High School, Luis Hinojosa.
Good evening, Board President, fellow board members, Dr. Bedell, fellow cabinet members. Welcome to Bear Country. Before we get started, what I'd like to do is I would like to ask if you are a staff member at East, faculty or staff member, would you please stand up for me, please? I want to recognize them. I thank you for the applause. It is great to see them come here and supporting our students, and this is a great opportunity, and we're thankful for that chance to come before you to kind of brag a little bit about our kiddos. So let us begin. A little bit about East. We have 1,168 students. We have 326 freshmen, 291 sophomores, 294 juniors, 257 seniors. Some of our classes are larger than some of the buildings that we have in our district. So there's a lot of challenges within that, but we are very, very proud of our school. We have almost 1,200 students, and it's a great thing to see. We have 46 spoken languages in our building. And that's just the major languages. Some languages have dialects broken into. We could be over in the 55, 60 range if we took into account the dialects that we have within those languages as well. Within the 1,100 students, we have 64% ELL, meaning English language learners. One of the things that I'm very proud of here is as we developed our strategic goals here at East, we wanted to make sure that we were aligned to what our board was wanting, what the strategic plan was having us head in that direction. And as if you can look up here, you can see that in the green column, goal 2, whole child, safe, challenged, and supported. That's a KCPS goal. Our strategic goal for East. We wanted to create a safe, focused, and positive student culture by consistently implementing behavior intervention support teams, which is BIST, and providing social emotional learning supports and opportunities. That follows under the Pillar B, Indicator 4, the strategic plan, which is provided community and network supports for students and families. Goal 3, which is our second goal for our East plan, continuous growth towards mastery of all academic subjects. Our goal is to increase instructional rigor and student engagement. That follows under the Pillar A, Indicator 2, focus teaching on high standards, rigorous curriculum, and reliable assessments. Our third goal, which is the fourth goal, 21st century critical thinkers and problem solvers, train and implement project-based learning strategies. That falls under the Pillar A, Indicator 2 standard in the strategic plan. Goal 5, readiness for college, career, and life. Our goal is to develop a career pathway program for all students. I'll go into more detail on that one in the next few slides. That falls under the Pillar A, Indicator 3, tailor instruction and interventions to student strengths and needs. As you can see here, this is our East plan. We were very fortunate to start this plan with the help of School Smart KC. They funded an individual to come in to help us develop the strategic plan. And this plan is very intense. This is part of our SIG grant, which is a school improvement grant that we have. And the grant is broken up into a couple of sections here. If you look at that bottom tier of the pyramid, social emotional learning, within that SIG grant, the school improvement grant, we're looking at trauma-informed instruction, culturally responsive teaching, behavior intervention support teams, communities in schools, Maddie Rose, behavior interventionist, City Year. This allows us to collaborate with many organizations within the community and to help our students that are needing some emotional, social needs. The next tier here is our instruction. We have project-based learning, we have workshop model. Our teachers are getting stronger with their PLC, which is our professional learning communities. Teach Like a Champion, you'll see it referred to as TLAC. Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, which is our SIOP. That's for our ELL students. And we also look at our tech and Google Classrooms. There's a lot of moving pieces within this, this grant, and the way we have this consolidated allows us to move freely through the plan. The next level here is the career pathways. This is something that is unique to us, and I want to go into a little bit more detail with that. Prep KC has allowed us an opportunity to get into deeper with this program. They help us with event planning, partnerships with area businesses. They helped us with developing our initial master schedule. And we have their assistance when it comes to developing an advisory programs to help within the pathway. And then we just have our pathway PLCs where we have our teams that are within each pathway, and they discuss how we can bring those things into the classroom. And then within our leadership team, we want to make sure that our department chair leads are trained, our administrative team is trained. We hold summer collaborative retreats. We want to meet with our teachers. So this school improvement grant, our East plan, is very intensive. There's a lot of moving pieces, but our staff and our administrative team do a great job wading through those waters. You heard me refer to the East plan or the East pathways. Here's a list of our pathways that we have available for our students. We have engineering, computer science, robotics, auto collisions, automotive tech, EMT, bioscience, health science, business, Cisco networking, nursing, teaching, culinary arts, construction, agriculture. This is an awesome opportunity for our students to learn what they may want to become when they graduate from high school. But on the other side of the coin as well, they may learn things that they may not want to do when they graduate. So this is a great opportunity for them to learn things on multiple levels. Our pathways are broken up into 2 academies. We have a Life Science Academy, Innovation Academy. And if you can look at this Life Science Academy, we have EMT, health science, nursing, bioscience, and agriculture. East High School is the only urban high school in the state of Missouri that has an ag program. That is something that we're very proud of, and our numbers for that program are growing, and we're also seeing a lot of our life science programs growing as well because of the medical component that we have to this. Now, how this pathway works, when a student enters East as a freshman, they all take the class Intro to Exploring Careers, every one of them. They learn something within each of the pathways that are available to them. Once they learn what each of those pathways are about, they make a decision at the end of their freshman year or at the beginning of their sophomore year, and they go into a pathway. Their sophomore year, they take a class, as you can see where it says first year courses, they take that first line. Their junior year, they take that second line. For example, we have the bioscience. They take their sophomore year Principles of Bioscience, their junior year Human Body Systems, and their senior year, they can take an option of medical interventions or anatomy and physiology. Once they complete all those courses, at the end of their senior year, they are allowed to take an IRC assessment, which is industry recognized credential. If they pass the IRC, they will earn that credential along with their diploma. That makes them marketable, and they can jump right into a career right out of high school. For example, here, if a student chose that bioscience pathway and they pass the IRC, they can immediately become a pharmacy tech. That is huge for our students. If you look at the next slide here, innovation, we have all these opportunities. If they decide to take the computer science pathway, they take the Intro to Exploring Careers as a freshman, they go to exploring computer science, then they can have a choice of going into computer science, Intro to Computer Science, or Pathways to Technology and Careers, and then they go into computer science and software engineering. They can graduate from East if they pass the IRCs with a high school diploma and a certificate to industry recognized credential, C++, Java, Cisco. That's a great opportunity for our students. Now, what I'd like to do here is this, and I'm not sure how many of our students are here When I call your names up here, I like to recognize that these are students that our teachers wanted to recognize within each of our pathways. Okay, so when I call your name, if you could come up here to the stage, and I want to get a group picture with our Life Science Academy students. If we can hold our applause until the end, we can get through this here a little bit. So under the EMT pathway, Sabrina Whalen and Myra Iguade. Health Science, Chadia Mupenda Ben Nishimi. Nursing, Brandon Ruiz Gonzalez and Balkis Hassan. Bioscience, Nejmaddin Amen and Treble Pa. And in agriculture, Damian Singhakon and Arturo Mendez. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Okay, for give me another round of applause. Yes, I agree. For our Innovation Academy, if I call your name, please come up here. For business, Raymond Hill and Mackenzie Ammons. Engineering, Rayvon Rayner and Atra Nice Jones. Auto Tech, Austin Hensley and Howard Freeman. Auto Collision, Ye Vu and Edgar Murillo. Construction, Deontay Ross, Michael Rivers. Computer Science, Isaiah Gonzalez, Dylan Devasher. Teaching, Sierra Jackson and Jade Valdez. And Culinary, Kathia Martinez and Avion Vorel. Let's give them a round of applause as well. Let's give another round of applause there. Now, the last group we're going to recognize here, as I said before, we have a freshman group that they learn all of the pathways. And when asked to identify a couple of students, that was very difficult since they're exposed to so many pathways. But they narrowed it down to two students, Darcy Mupenda and Dana Nunez. They're part of our freshman academy students that are learning everything, and they're doing a great job there. And for our senior academy, Carla Parra and Jaliza Garcia. We can have them come up here. And also, we were asked to recognize some students just overall who are doing well. And I also want to make sure that we recognize Luz Moreno and Mackenzie Ammons. As they're doing that, I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to see the artwork that was displayed out in front. Luz has some of those projects out there. Also, if you saw the rabbit out there as part of our ag, you know, there's a lot of great things going on here at East, and we're very proud of the work our staff is doing, our administrative team, especially our students. I hope you guys enjoy this, and I thank you for the time, for allowing me the opportunity to brag a little bit about our students and our staff. And there's some great things going, and we're just looking forward to an awesome end of the school year. Are there any questions you guys may have? Thank you very much.
Now for item 3.01, the chair recognizes John Fierro to present the resolution to adopt the 2019 legislative priorities.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as each of you know, we have been updating you the last probably 2 or 3 months on our work to bring before you the 2019 legislative priorities. The last year, couple of years, what we have done is tried to be very specific in what we wanted our lobbyist, John Barget and Associates, to represent us on, Barget and Associates, sorry, to represent us on. And so what we come to you tonight is with 3 primary priorities and then a couple of others that we want to support. But before I move forward, I want to recognize members of the Government Relations Committee. I'm joined on that group by Patty Manzer, Jennifer Wolfsey, as well as Andrea Flenders, and then staff. So we, on a regular basis, have Dr. Bedell present, as well as many of his senior cabinet members, Linda Quinley, Ray Weichel, Shannon Jacks, and Shauna. And then we have our new staff person. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a little bit of background and then ask my colleague Jennifer Wolfsey to get into the specifics. But just as we've done in the previous years, we arrived to the priorities by seeking input from some of our partner organizations. First of all, the Missouri School Board Association, MSBA, as well as the Cooperating Schools of Greater Kansas City, and then of course internally seeking the input of our superintendent, Dr. Mark Bedell, and his staff. And so what Ms. Wolfsey is going to present to you is really a culmination of all that input and discussions and just back and forth. And I just want to commend the committee that have been there from the very beginning doing all the hard work. So I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, John. And I also just want to echo that this is the work of not just the committee, but a larger group, and that we're getting better each year that we do this and being collaborative, not just locally, but even regionally with cooperating school districts of Greater Kansas City and the Missouri School Boards Association. And even taking some of the work that we're learning when we go to conferences, some of the national conferences, and trying to bring it back to this work as well. So very quickly, we will be looking at a motion to adopt the top 3 priorities that we will focus on as a school district. The first one is about supporting adequate and equitable public school funding. And just to give a little bit of background, for many years now, both at the federal level and at the state level, we have programs that we are mandated to implement, such as Title I programs and IDEA, which are our special education students. But yet we are not at the federal level. Actually, the federal government is only funding those currently at like a 12% and 15% level. And so that is one of the areas, since we do serve so many students that come from low-income families and have special education needs, that we want to make sure that we spend part of the year educating our constituency and working with legislators to help them understand some of the challenges we have that we need to make sure that those dollars are actually there for us when we need to serve those students. So that will be a new area that we've kind of not really focused on in years past, but that we'd like to start. So advocating for the full funding of federal Title I and IDEA obligations, as well as in the state of Missouri, it's equally important. We have 2 formulas there. One is the state foundation formula, which has actually been fully funded the last couple of years, and we want to make sure that we advocate for maintaining that in the next school year. But one of the other formulas is the school transportation formula, which itself has not been funded at the levels that it should be. It's approximately at 15% of what it should be. And the reason why we want to make sure we talk to legislators about getting that funded at the level that is constitutionally required is because every dollar that we have to spend on transportation that's not there coming from the budget actually comes straight out of the classroom. So you can see that that would be a huge impact to what's going on in the daily one-on-one within the school. So the second one, our second priority is the supporting legislation and the enforcement of current statutes to provide transparency regarding the financial stewardship and governance of public school districts and charter schools to ensure accountability for use of public funds. And this one really is pretty simple when you boil it down, but what we want to do is make sure that all schools are playing by a lot of the same rules when it comes to transparency and accountability. So some of the things we're going to be looking to advocate for is the requirement of reporting of financial information, both from the public school districts, but also on charter school websites with regards to comprehensive pictures of revenue and expenses, including contributions, contracts, salary schedules, and any and all debt service. We also want to advocate for requiring members of governing boards to reside in the school districts in which those schools operate. A lot of people don't understand that actually that is a requirement for those of us here within the public school setting, but not necessarily so on the charter school side. And then also advocating that all board meetings be open to the public, publicized in advance, and have online access to the minutes. So again, just the same rules that we play by, we want to make sure that all schools in the state of Missouri are also playing by those. And our last priority this year will be to support laws and local ordinances pertaining to tax incentive and abatement programs to provide school districts greater determination over the use of duly authorized local revenue sources. And this one's near and dear to my heart. I don't know if a lot of people realize, but we lose approximately $35 million a year here in the Kansas City Public Schools in real property tax collections. These get diverted to economic development projects within the city. And over the last many years, we've basically had to defer approximately, we've seen over $450 million of facility and maintenance improvement needs that directly support education be deferred due to lack of funds. And so we really do want to make sure that we are working and advocating to get as many of those local funds back into our local coffers. And so two of the ways we'll do that is to advocate for equal representation on any tax incentive abatement commission to ensure we have adequate consideration for the impact on us as taxing jurisdictions, and also to advocate for school boards to have veto power over their portion of any tax incentive or abatement projects. The last two really are things that we will not kind of take the lead on. These are just focus areas for us, but we will probably follow the lead of some other organizations around the state where these are their top priorities. And one is to support state funding to allow public school districts to offer and expand quality pre-K education programs, and then to oppose the use of vouchers, tax credits, deductions for tuition, and related educational expenses to divert public monies to non-public K through 12 schools.
So, Madam Chair, on behalf of the Government Relations Committee, I put forward that the board adopt the top 3 priorities as presented by Ms. Wolfsey.
Is there a second to the?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I would like to thank our legislative committee for the tremendous work that you all have put forth in bringing these priorities, and then also the work to really align these with our Missouri School Boards Association and other organizations. We look forward to the legislative breakfast that will help to unpack some of these items, and I particularly underscore the residential requirement that requires all public school governing boards, including charters, to reside within the Kansas City Public School boundaries. So I really appreciate the focus that we're putting on transparency and tax dollars and everything that's outlined here. So any other comments or? All right, will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Fierro?
Yes.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Oates?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Dr. Hartsfeld? Ms. Morris? Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you. Now for our workshop presentation, Board Policy Monitoring 1.3, recognize Dr. Bedell to present that option.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the community, we want to assure you that the administration takes very seriously its responsibility on trying to adhere to the board ends, policy series 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. As a result, it's our job to give an update to the community and to the board as to our progress towards meeting those ends. And so what we want to do at this time is, this is a pretty heavy session for a board workshop this month, but it's one of the most important components of the work that we have to do. And I know we have to report this 2 times throughout the year. And so we're gonna bring up at this time our team to focus on community service and service learning hours. Dr. Marla Shepard and Jermaine Wilson, I believe that's, if I have that right. Is that the right order? All right, so we're ready.
I just wanted to quickly let our public know that you can text any questions that you might have for the administration regarding the presentation to 816-678-7099, 678-7099.
Good evening. Policy 1.3 is very comprehensive, and what you will hear tonight is all of the various members of our team get up and present on the aspects that they are responsible for. And so we will start our presentation with Dr. Jermaine Wilson.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard. Superintendent Bedell, Board President Robinson, members of the board and cabinet, good evening. Tonight, I will be presenting to you on community service and service learning for Board Policy 1.3. I want to start off with a comparison on our community service hours between the 2017 school year and 2018. If you'll see on the graph, in 2017, our seniors that year ended with a cumulative amount of service hours at 19,287. I'm excited that last year our senior class ended with a cumulative amount of 24,274 hours, almost a 5,000 hour increase. Please give them a round of applause. It is truly a testament to the work that our building principals and leadership team set forth as far as the expectations on community service and service learning. And our seniors last year had an average of 34.3 hours per student. Some of the observations that we made last year in working with our seniors was most of our seniors waited until they were in their 12th grade year to begin the journey towards accumulating community service hours. Also, it was a noted struggle that many of our KCPS students struggled to find time and opportunities out of the school day to engage in service learning opportunities. Transportation for service opportunities was a challenge noted by many of our district students. And also the need to make a stronger relevance for community service as a graduation requirement that was communicated to both parents and students. So now, having met the goal, we still want to continue to move on an upward trajectory and increase the amount of service learning and community service hours that we have for our students. So I want to share with you some of the goals and interventions for this school year. As noted at the end of last school year, one of the things we wanted to do as we transitioned to service learning was to embed the service learning component in all of our end of course exam areas. And so this year, our 4th quarter of this school year, our students that are in the biology courses and senior capstone courses will work on service learning projects that are explicitly connected to the content area. These areas will be designated in the X2Vol platform and approved by teachers, which I will discuss on the next slide. Also, I'm excited that many of our high schools have already begun providing service opportunities to their students, and many of our buildings have taken a focus on not just making it an important aspect for our seniors, but all of the high school students, 9th through 12th grade. So in many of our high schools, you'll see competitions going on between the grade levels. You see opportunities that are explicit for the grade levels. And we've also partnered with many of our district partners to provide opportunities for our students. On January 1st, we will begin transitioning to X2Vol, which is an online volunteer and community service learning hour accumulation platform. Students will be notified of opportunities that are in the Kansas City area that'll come up on their Navient platform when they log in. So that will help some of the students that don't know where to go for opportunities. And we're also making sure that all of our community partners know that they can notify us and we can notify our students of those opportunities. We also have a vast amount of staff members in our high schools that are providing service opportunities for students after school in an effort to help the students to log their hours. Also, our avid 8th and 9th grade students have begun planning their service learning projects that they'll be working on during the 3rd quarter. And each of those students are tasked with developing a service learning project that's connected to their life goals essay. And the life goals essay for our AVID students is a project that they start their first year of AVID, and then it culminates in their senior year and they build on it. So right now they're thinking about their aspirations and ways that they can impact the community. And then their teachers will be engaging them in the design process for how they can implement that. So transitioning to the X2Vol platform, it is a complete online service that is provided to us. We piloted with Lincoln College preparatory students last year, and those students transitioned seamlessly to it. Some of the advantages is that our school administrators can create service goals for their students based on their class that they're in. So they can set a particular goal for a month for our 9th grade students, 10th grade students, and then monitor those so that they can highlight them in their school. It also gives many of our students that do external community service hours the opportunity to put in who they did those hours with, and then those people approve, deny, or partially approve hours. They're able to generate at any given time a real-time report on where their students are with service learning hours, and it also eliminates the storage of us duplicating papers, having forms that we have to input into Tyler, and the X2Vol platform seamlessly talks to our Tyler services. An exciting component is also it allows for school administrators to set benchmarks for their students. And so students that meet a benchmark, for instance, if this quarter I've set the benchmark to be 25 hours, a student that meets 25 hours, it sends a notification to the principal and generates a certificate that can be presented to the students based on that service learning benchmark. For students, they also can find service opportunities in the local area. They can sign up for service opportunities in their schools. They are asked to add reflections to each of their experiences so that they can make a personal connection to it. They can see their progress towards the goals for graduation. They can set it to receive reminders, and then they can also print a service transcript in addition to their high school transcript through Tyler. This is just a screenshot of the X2Vol platform and how students log their service hours. You'll see that the first part points to where our staff members and schools can add a personal project. We have one of the high schools where the counselor is working with the students and they're actually taking plastic bags and they are making quilts for homeless students. And so that is one of the personal projects that they can add. They can estimate on how many hours of community service that activity is worth, and then they can log it in their school. They can have it as a recurring project for many of our students that are part of clubs and organizations. And they can also add hours for an activity that they signed up for through X2Vol. It also allows our students to make sure that with the X2Vol platform, when they log into their Navient account, they are able to progress monitor and see on the dashboard where they're moving towards their benchmark of volunteer hours. And it gives them a badge system, almost a gaming concept, where they get awards once they exceed the benchmark or they've exceeded the 40 hours for graduation. Are there any questions?
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Wolfsey.
Thank you for the presentation. Very quickly, you know I always ask this because I'm a parent of a kid that has this age. So will this be something parents will be able to, you said it works seamlessly with Tyler. Parents I know use Tyler to monitor how their students are doing on many different things, attendance and grades. Will there be one of those great cards that you see on the page for your student where they can see how their students' progress is going as it relates to service hours?
Yes, the X2 Vault system talks to Tyler, and so when students log hours in X2 Vault, the interchange happens each night with Tyler, and then that updates into the Tyler portal for the students.
Great.
Mr. Oates?
Kind of similar to what Ms. Wolfsey was saying, but I know under observations was that seniors were waiting to the last minute. One question I had was, and I've had this question before just around graduation expectations in general, but how are we proactively communicating to students and family what the expectations are around graduation so that we're not finding ourselves in positions where kids are having to either seek credit recovery or do a bunch of community service in the last 2 weeks of their senior year? How are we working with them consistently?
So one of the things that we asked was all of the senior sponsors and principals to make sure that they included for all of their students at parent-teacher conferences a listing of the graduation requirements. We've also taken a concentrated effort to make sure that we are communicating with our middle school students what the requirements are for graduation and not waiting until they get into the high school arena to actually say that this is a requirement. So essentially we want our middle school students to know. We want our elementary students, when we talk to them through Kids to College, we want to make them more aware of what the high school requirements are. We want them to know everything up front, what it takes to exit our system before they transition into post-secondary options.
Board Member Mansur?
Thank you. This is a great presentation. Question and then one comment, I think. So one of the things I love about this is it's not just adding on, layering on more work, but it's around introducing young people into the value of becoming involved in their community and the role they can play. But it also, community service, it can be a very essential part of their college application process. It can set them apart from other applicants and students. It could increase their likelihood that they can secure scholarships. So can you tell me what mechanisms are in place through the counseling office or through the staff to help students take that body of work that is the logging of information and the adding of experience and understand and convert that into better college applications? How does that occur?
One of the things we've done is we've gone through the high schools working with the students transition into the Naviance platform. One of the things we've been taking them through is the college super match. And we've been talking about match and fit for students. But not only that, we've looked at what are the requirements that helps to make you a stronger applicant to the school. And so we look at the schools that have a rating, looking at how many service hours that you have, and translating that into the importance of community service. We also help students to think like, once you take what types of courses that you're taking in the high school area, when you plan for your courses, that also impacts, where you want to go to school. So if you say that you want to go to Harvard, understanding that there's a trajectory of courses that you need to plan for that'll make you a more viable applicant. And I think that awareness piece has been great for our students to say, oh, it's not just community service, but this is making me well-rounded, and I can see how this plugs into my future.
Let me just tag on to that. If you've been reading some of the changes that are taking place across the country, University of Chicago, there are several universities who are no longer utilizing SAT or ACT scores for admittance. They are genuinely looking at a body of work. They're looking at their GPAs, they're looking at their extracurricular activities, they're looking at the things that they've done in terms of service to their community. And so in our strategic plan, when we talk about goal number 5, preparing students for college, career, and life, we have to really take a very holistic approach to making sure that we're giving our kids all of these opportunities so that they can have a well-rounded resume that will allow for them to be able to get into these different universities. Those days are over of people just looking at your GPA and looking at a one snapshot assessment. They're starting to move more and more away from that. And I think as a school system, we have to start pivoting away from that too. Although we know as a state, we have our criterion reference assessment that we have to adhere to, and we want our kids to perform on all of those assessments, but we have to make sure that they're well-rounded, because it's more to a student than just one date or one snapshot of an assessment.
So then I think the last thing, because I agree wholly, and there's a lot being shared around the country around this, and so I think that one thing that is my thought, similar to Jennifer's, you know, I don't have children in school now, but this was always a struggle. I hope that just as the district has oftentimes in the past kind of walked parents through the Tyler system and used the DAC as one of the starting points for introducing those kinds of new technologies, I really hope there'll be an opportunity to have some of our DAC leaders, DAC parents who come to those monthly DAC meetings, get to experience firsthand a walkthrough of this X2Vol platform. I think that would be a great place to start, because those parents can be ambassadors for this within their schools.
Excellent suggestion. I would love to come and present on X2Vol and our Naviance program so that they can see the power. And I find with parents, once they're able to walk through it and see what their students are doing, that engages them and increases their buy-in as well. Thank you.
I had a couple questions. Can you go back to the first slide, please? With the data about the comparison, what percentage of that represents our population? So what percentage of our population completed the 24,274, and which percentage completed the 19,287?
So by population, all of the students that these hours are accounted for are all of the 12th grade students in the Kansas City Public Schools.
Okay, so those are 12th graders?
Yes. Okay.
So, but you're moving to, and then if you could go to the, I think it's the 4th slide, where it talks about the X2Vol platform. So you're moving to pushing it down to, one more slide, sorry. Yeah. So you're moving to push it down to the 9th grade versus waiting until the 12th grade, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so you mentioned 25 hours per student. Is that 9th graders, or does a 9th grader have to complete the same goal as a 12th grader?
That was just a hypothetical goal that a principal or a building could set. For instance, like Northeast High School, they have a competition where Principal Bolden has challenged his 9th grade students to get 25 hours the first semester. And so they have a competition between their grade levels going so students can start accumulating those hours.
Because the requirement is 40 hours, and our job is we do not want them to wait until their senior year.
Correct.
So if they're able to complete the 40 in their freshman year, that's great, that's one check mark, but we do want to encourage our students that if they want to go above and beyond, we definitely encourage that, but we want to start with them at their freshman year so that by the time they're seniors, we're in great shape.
Yeah.
But which percentage of our 12th graders are doing the required 40?
Which percentage of?
So if we look at all of our 12th graders, which percentage are actually meeting that mark?
All of our students are meeting the mark. We had 25 students last year. That was an exception because they had IEPs, and the type of services they were being provided wouldn't allow them to get the hours.
And we were very intentional because my staff can share with you that it was my understanding that in the past, students didn't necessarily complete those 40 hours, and we still allow for students to walk. And I made it very loud and clear. I was very loud and clear that it's 40 hours. There's some school systems where you have to do 75. So 40 hours is not something that's difficult, and it is a policy that we have in place as a district. We do know that there are other school districts that don't require community service learning hours, but we do have it, and it's something that I do expect us to adhere to.
And I just had, I had a couple more questions. If you could go to the slide before the other one where it talks about the goals and intervention. Okay, yes, that one. So can you tell us a little bit about biology and like why that was selected? And then the senior capstone, is that going to be their community service, is it going to be connected to the capstone, and how does that work?
Yes. So we decided to choose biology as our first end-of-course area because we didn't want to overload all of our teachers with rolling this out. And so we know that many of our students are interested in the life sciences. There are lots of opportunities where students can take the content and easily connect it to the environment. And so that was how biology was chosen. Senior capstone is really becoming an embedded part where instead of we're asking the students to create the senior capstone paper, we're actually asking them to think of an impact project in addition to that paper. And then a portion of the senior capstone paper then becomes a reflection based on that impact study. And then that also helps our seniors to also meet the benchmark without having to do it outside.
Great, awesome. And then the third bullet, when you talked about the students will be notified of opportunities, how does that, is there what's the accountability? Who's accountable for that in terms of the notification? And then do we have any goals? Like if you talked about all of our community partners will be able to put information on the portal. Do we have goals to say that at all times we will have at least 15 service projects and I'm just trying to understand the accountability measure as it relates to the notification.
So the accountability with the notification, when a partner says that they have an opportunity, for instance, junior achievement, I met with them this week and they were talking about service opportunities that they have for students that they would like to present to our high schools in various months. And so they would then contact me with the description of the service project, the hours, the location, whether it is something that students need to provide their own transportation. And then I would log it in from a district level if it was going out to all of our students in the district. But there are also Navient site managers at each of the high schools where if a school has an individual partner they're working with that has an opportunity, that site manager can then add that particular just for their site. I have not gotten as far as to think about benchmark opportunities at a time, but that's definitely something I can go back and revisit.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
That was a great presentation, Dr. Wilson. And Dr. Bedell, I am glad to hear you say that colleges and universities are looking at more than just test scores. Because test scores don't really, in all cases, reflect the ability of a student. There's a certain amount of anxiety that goes along with testing. So I'm happy to hear that comments about looking at more than just test scores.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Our next presentation will be on our student support services update to the board, and we will bring Ms. Molly Tickner to conduct the next several slides.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, Board Chair Robinson and board members and Dr. Bedell. Our report is directly tied to Board Policy 1.3.3 plus Pillar B, Safe Climate and Strong Relationships with Families and Communities, and particularly priority number 4, creating safety nets. Just a quick reminder, you've probably seen this visual a few times presented at different board meetings and different venues, but we've made some additions to remind the team and you all of where student support lies, whether that's our discipline office, our nursing office, our behavioral health, and security, in terms of what level of interventions we provide in kind of the tier 2, which is that small targeted group cohort, as well as that tier 3 social emotional support. I also want to clarify here that we have numerous other community partners that are in our schools and other departments internally that are providing this level of support. Our counselors do some psychoeducation groups and one-on-one support. We have numerous agencies like Campfire Heartland and Center for Conflict Resolution that are doing restorative justice in circles in some of our classrooms and some of our schools, as well as focusing on the health screenings and focusing on providing that basic need, those basic healthcare needs with our nursing department, and utilizing our internal and external community partners to provide that one-on-one mental health support like Maddie Rhodes and Swope and Truman, who are embedded into some of our schools as well. Some of the accomplishments that we've had thus far last year and this year starting in the summer, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. We've trained 18 Kansas City Public Schools staff to be certified as youth mental health first aid instructors for the district. We were able to achieve a grant through the Black Community Foundation to fund having the trainers come in and do a 4-day training to be certified as instructors so that we have an internal sustainability plan to roll out youth mental health first aid to train not only our staff but potentially our parents and other members of the community to be able to respond and understand what mental health diagnoses are and provide basic understanding of how to de-escalate in a crisis situation. So we're really fortunate enough to be able to have that. Previously, we relied on community partners to provide that level of training, which creates a cost for us. So now we have the sustainability internally. The second highlight I would like to share that we've worked really diligently on for the past 2 years with the Missouri School Board Association's guidance and with state stakeholders to increase our ability to increase our Medicaid reimbursement. Just a few numbers that I was able to pull from our Medicaid coordinator and our wonderful people in finance. In 2016, we pulled down approximately $880,000 of Medicaid revenue. In 2017, in the academic year, we pulled down almost $1.3 million. We're still working on this year, this academic year. So next year, in January or June, when we report, we'll have numbers for where we are currently. But we've been able to increase that Medicaid reimbursement, which ties directly into being able to provide some of the support services that we're able to provide in our schools directly with our families, as well as adding more additional staff. We've also been able to conduct over 2,000 health screenings this year, just since August, with our Kansas City Public School students, and that includes vision, hearing, and basic physicals. I will tell you one thing we're finding from these physicals is that students can't see. Students can't hear, so we're able to provide that intervention right there, be able to provide that resource, link them with agencies to get the glasses so that they can be successful in the classroom. So our goal within our nursing department is to complete those health screenings, at least 85% of the health screenings by the end of this academic year. We've also been able to work in collaboration with school leadership and within our schools to provide the guidance on creating problem-solving teams in our schools. This is a work in progress. This is something that we did a lot of training with during the summer with our school teams and our leadership, working with the school counselors who are typically our problem-solving team coordinators. Our staff my staff in our department have been able to provide them some level of coaching with the individual school-based problem-solving teams, as well as we will continue to provide that ongoing coaching and training. The hope with some of these supportive services that we're providing and the goal is that this will reduce some of the disciplinary infractions and some of the behavioral incidents that are popping up in our school. But as you know, we're in November, and so as we work on these processes and as our teachers and our staff and our administrators are able to implement these procedures more readily and more seamlessly, then we'll hopefully start to see the results. Just a few highlights of some of the roles of our clinical staff that are in our schools. We do have 12 staff now spread across the schools. Our clinicians are those that are really providing that high-level mental health support. They are covering less schools this year. They're covering 3 to 4 schools rather than 8 to 9 schools. And our family support specialists are complementing those clinicians and those social workers by providing that outreach in the community. They're linking families to resources. They're attending meetings with families in the community. They're providing them, basic needs of housing and how to overcome paying some of the bills that are getting in the way of them being successful in the community. And so they work as part of a team, which is really really quite an intricate relationship that they've developed, and we're really fortunate enough to be able to have those teams. This is an outline. You might have seen these on our Friday reports. In terms of the interventions that are provided by our mental health team, I want to highlight that first line. This is interventions provided from August 8th to November 9th. I was able to pull this report from Tyler now that they are entering in the data into Tyler. If we look at the one-on-one student supports, the social emotional supports they're providing to our students, within that 3-month time span, they've been able to provide 485 basically one-on-one contacts. I looked at historical data and I pulled the data from March to October of 2017. With less staff, they did 488 visits. So you can see that by allowing us to add more staff to our team and by having them cover less schools, we've been able to provide as many one-on-one interventions in a short time period as opposed to 6 months that we had last year. Any questions?
Board Member Hartsfield.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. This might be back to Dr. Bedell, or it could be to you. I was looking under the student support accomplishments, and it said we've conducted over 200 health screenings, vision and hearing. You know, this is very dear to me, the health screenings that are done to our elementary school children. I just take it from my own experience of having a son in the first grade who I thought was an excellent parent, but I found out that his sight was so bad, his teacher said if he got up from the seat, he probably couldn't find it. We really need to try to see, is there any way that all of our elementary school children can have eye and hearing and dental screenings? Because if a child cannot see, cannot hear, and their mouth is sore, it's has direct correlation to their learning. And many of our children might have excellent parents. I thought I was an excellent parent, but they might not realize that their child is not seeing, hearing, or their mouth is not working properly. And oftentimes it's manifest in behavioral when it's really something that can be addressed. And I just want to be sure that we have it, because 2,000 doesn't come across all of our elementary, and we might have this throughout our population because we are such a diverse district that kids come in at all ages. But I'd like to be sure that we provide the screening. Is there a way that we can make sure that all of our kids are screened for, you know, or at least some kind of way?
Yeah, definitely, Dr. Hartsfield. Our goal, this is just for the past 3 months that we provided the 2,000. So we're going school by school. We're utilizing Score One, which is from the Health Science University, as well as we're using interns from KU and UMKC to come in and do the screening. So we've really focused primarily on our elementary schools and our elementary school students. And so it's really coordinating that with the building principal and setting the dates. And so we've had about, just on average, about 2 or 3 per month. Hopefully, as we develop more relationships with individuals, because our nurses can't do it alone, we really need those stations. And so as we develop more partnerships, then we can increase the capacity to be able to reach. But that is our goal, is that we conduct those screenings on all KCPS students.
Thank you.
And we would definitely want to continue to communicate with the community because we also do these screenings also at Summerfest. It's a great opportunity to take advantage and get a large number of students, whether they're in our school system or not. Because of now partnering with Operation Breakthrough, we have a large facility where we can actually move a lot of students in and out. And so that's something that we can also work on, really conveying to our community that Summerfest that Saturday is a great opportunity to capture a lot of students.
Yes, definitely.
Board Member Manson.
This is a presentation that feels really important to me because I've heard stories from teachers firsthand about students in the classrooms who couldn't see, but maybe the parents didn't understand, very similar to what Dr. Hartsfield said. I think it's incredibly common in the hearing as well. So another thought, and then I do have a question, is that because we serve such a large portion of newcomers, immigrants and refugees, and those newcomers, when they arrive and come to us, we welcome them instantly into our classrooms, but they may not have had as comprehensive of screenings. And I think there are a tremendous number of community agencies that we could probably look to. We have such good partnership options here to help ensure that at least the vision and hearing is attended to at the moment they arrive at our classrooms, because I think we've seen a high preponderance of issues in those populations. But I'm also very interested in the Medicaid. I'm really thrilled to see that number goes up, and hopefully it continues to go up, and hopefully we continue to assess for challenges. And so I think I guess the question I have is, because we know that there are a lot of emotional health and physical health, but especially the social emotional health is getting a huge amount of attention. We're seeing in our suburban school districts, just across the state line in Kansas, we're seeing Shawnee Mission, Olathe, and Blue Valley have teamed up to develop a whole suicide prevention initiative. I mean, this is across all types of districts and all kinds of socioeconomic backgrounds. Do we have opportunities where we might potentially team up with some neighboring school districts on our side of the state line to look at, are there ways to leverage resources? Are there ways to maximize access to clinicians and behavior interventionists? I don't know if there's any mechanisms whereby we could draw. I think a lot of people believe that we can, when we are offering all this social emotional health and wellness programming, that's wholly covered by our state dollars, but in fact it's not. A lot of this is the general operating revenue that we're using. And so I'm just wondering, have we explored any places where we might leverage with some neighboring districts, because we are not alone in this struggle?
Right. One of the things that we're doing, board member, is I recently started to attend the KCPS-TV committee, which is the Kansas City Suicide Awareness Prevention Program, which is actually a bi-state initiative that's being led by various school districts and various community mental health centers that meet the mental health needs of Kansas and Missouri residents. And I presented at one of the last meetings on what we are doing for suicide prevention in terms of the procedures and the policies that we've created around suicide screenings and the trainings that we're doing. And what I've found, Blue Valley was there, Shawnee Mission was there, Olathe North, Olathe South. There were a lot of districts that were part of it. And they were actually, to be honest, they were quite impressed with the procedures and policies that we put in effect. However, they're also doing some really great suicide awareness programs like the Zero Suicide Initiative, and so that's a collaborative opportunity that we're going to grasp onto to be able to share that information and potentially figure out how we can bring those prevention programs into KCPS, as well as bring more mental health services into and leverage some of our community partners. I think we're starting to look at generating some other partnerships, utilizing the Children's Service Fund was something we're actually going to be applying for that fund the next round, because they just opened it up. I'm not sure if you're aware, but they opened up a round for schools so that it's aligned with the school year instead of the fiscal year. So we've decided to wait to apply for that so that it aligns with the school year. So we will be applying for that the next round, which I believe is in January, I'm guessing, and just kind of ballparking when that submission is. And one of the things that we're writing in is to help leverage some more dollars to support potentially having more clinicians or more social emotional support in our schools.
Board Member Wolfsey?
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question that actually can end up in the Friday packet because I don't expect you to be able to answer it. But on the problem-solving teams, Molly, you mentioned that they are kind of a work in progress at this point, kind of like our data teams were many years ago when we were just getting started with those on the academic side. So just like on the data team side, you have emerging and then you have high functioning. What I'd like to know is with the problem-solving teams, it would be helpful for me to, from a district level lens, to know roughly where are our schools, are they emerging?
Putting them where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, you pick this whatever, but I can pretty much figure emerging and high functioning and figure out your middle. But just to kind of get a feel for where we are, and then that would help me to know, then are we going to set some goals then over the next couple of years?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We can work in collaboration with school leadership for that. Yeah.
For the Medicaid reimbursement, is there a target number to increase? So to increase Medicaid reimbursement by a certain percentage?
I don't have the answer to that, Ms. Quinley. Do we have a target? I mean, we definitely want to continue to increase every year, but I don't know if we have a set target.
Oh, great. That's really good to share. 56% in 1 year. That is phenomenal. So I think
you should have presented on that. Thank you for the percentage. I just got these numbers right before the board meeting, so I apologize I didn't have that percentage.
I'm gonna do, where's the hallelujah music?
Yeah, you need the dance.
Yes, okay. So
really worked hard to make that happen.
Scorecard this here, and I just want to make sure that what I'm reading on the scorecard is reflective of what your presentation is. I see that there is some overlap, so some of this will come up in the mentoring section. But under goal 2B, and I realize and recognize that you're doing pillar B, safe and climate, but there seems to be some overlap as it relates to goal 2B, the percentage of students receiving effective social and emotional behavior interventions. And it says that we're at 8.1%, but you have all those hundreds of 400, I think it was over 400 kids that receive some level of. So I just wanted to double check the accuracy of that 8.1% on the scorecard. Yeah, it says 485 have received one.
Those are visits, so that it doesn't necessarily mean students. It could have been multiple visits on one student. So I don't know where that 8% came from, honestly. I'm not sure where that number was reported from. But as you look at the 485 on our tracking, it's the amount of visits. So they could have met with the same student multiple times.
Okay, is that something we can clarify?
Yeah, let me dig into that a little bit more and find out where, because I feel like we might be a little bit over that, but I'm not really sure. Because one of the things, like you said, Board Chair Robinson, is that we need to account for the multiple layers of social emotional support. So if they are seeing a counselor, just like the guidance counselor for triage, if they are seeing the behavior interventionist, if they are having social emotional support through mentorship, I think we need to kind of bring all those together because of that multi-tier level of intervention support. So we'll dig into those numbers a little bit more.
And if there is a goal, or if there's purposely that we don't have a goal under that, that would be good to know in the Friday update.
Okay.
Related to the scorecard there. And then the other one was a goal around Pillar B, Indicator B3, the percentage of parents that agree or strongly agree that my child is safe and supported at school. The numbers are very high, which is great. 88.3% are safe and 84.6% are supported. But it doesn't appear to be like a goal for that either. So that might be something to report back to the board at another time about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can do that. Any other questions?
All right.
All right. I will pass it off to Dr. Shepard and Dr. Davis to speak on 1.3.3 in the mentor program.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tickner. Good evening, Superintendent Bedell, Board Chair Robinson, members of the board, audience. This year marks the second year of our mentoring efforts, and before we get into this monitoring report, just want to thank the board for your support of this initiative and for funding these efforts, and also thank Dr. Bedell for his vision. That is based on the belief that schools can't do this work alone. I also actually have to thank the numerous mentors from the community who have come in to provide support and encouragement for our young people. All right, so this first slide, this is a slide that you received at the end of last school year, and so wanted to bring this to your attention that our mentoring efforts include a lot of community partners. It's through our collective efforts that we are looking to impact and provide role models and support and guidance to as many students as possible. For the purposes of this particular monitoring report, we're going to focus on the Kansas City Public Schools numbers. And so as you see, we ended last school year at 219. So for the remainder of this presentation, we're going to focus on the progress for where we are with Kansas City Public Schools mentoring. However, by the time we come back to you again at the end of the year, you'll see the full growth of all of the partners as well, and we've added more partners, so we're all growing together toward the goal that Dr. Bedell set of 7,500 students within 5 years. And you can see at the bottom of that first slide, we almost reached 1,500 in year one. So as we move through, want to give you just a brief overview of our programs. So at the elementary level, we have the Lunch Buddies program, where mentors come in once per week to provide support and encouragement over the lunch hour. I won't mention all of the partners as we go through these overview slides, but just want to highlight some. So we have Hallmark, over 40 employees have been trained. They have adopted Longfellow Elementary. We just struck a deal with Girl Scouts. They have about 60 employees here in Kansas City. Over 20 of them have signed up to be lunch buddies. They will adopt Garcia, and we're excited to move forward with the fire department. They have 120 firefighters that have signed up. We also want to highlight for our Success Mentors initiative. This is our largest program because we started with this. We have many mentors from the community who are providing one-on-one support for our students. We prioritize matches for this program for students in grades 6 through 9. I will just highlight a couple. We have Spire. There are over 23 men who are mentoring. They started out at Troost Elementary last year. We have an additional, about half of them will adopt Central Middle School here within the next week. They've been trained. And then also want to highlight the Cause Church. Over 50 of their members have been trained. The success of this program has proven beneficial. Last school year, at the end of the year, our research department provided our data, and it showed that 39% of our students, their attendance and their grades increased through last year with the support of the mentor compared to where they ended the previous year without a mentor's support. Also, we have at our high schools, we have the MOCA program, Men of Color, Honor and Ambition. This program is open to young men in their 10th grade year. They will stay in this program for 3 years, and our goal is to make sure that they attend post-high school institutions. This program has received a lot of support financially, and we have lots of resources from University of Missouri Columbia, as well as locally, the Prime Health Foundation. All right, so again, last year at the end of the year, we were at 219. So far this year, as of November 14th, we're at 444. We do expect that by the end of the year, our numbers will be well over 700 as mentors who are currently being processed as they continue to get matched. And we also have additional partnerships and supporters that are coming in. So when we break down that 444, you see where they currently fall. The majority of the matches are at the elementary level. And you also see where we have a large pool of mentees is also at the elementary level. So this is where we really want to leverage the mentoring support to funnel them into our elementary schools. This is where parents have signed permission slips and are really looking for that support for their young people. So as we continue to break it down by elementary, middle, and high, this slide shows the male-female growth over 2017-18 to this school year. So what you're looking at is, on the far left, you see that last school year we had in elementary 45 males matched and 92 females matched. But you'll see this year that number has increased to 73 males and 145 females at the elementary level. And then you see your numbers increase at the middle school level this year, as well as the high school level. There was growth in both male and female matches. And again, all of that adds up to our 444 currently. So a logical question is, how are we measuring this? Well, first and foremost, I want to remind you of the video that you saw last year, where you heard from the voices of our own students, where they shared that the mentors helped them to set goals and to achieve those goals. So we heard directly from our young people that the mentoring is working for them. Also, we heard earlier that our own data reflected from last year showed an increase for many of our young people in terms of their academic achievement as well as their student attendance. But also, we want to measure the success of the program through the social-emotional learning. We want to know that mentors are helping young people develop a high sense of self, that we're developing grit, that we're helping them learn how to manage their emotions, how to connect with others, how to speak confidently to other people, just really how to develop those resilient skills, how to pick themselves up if they fall. And so this year we have entered into, we've purchased surveys, partnered with Panorama Education, and through this we're able to administer a baseline survey that measures the SEL components to see where students are now in their ability. Do they believe that they can learn anything if they try hard enough? So we can capture this. The window opens next week, and we'll administer this across our schools over the next 2 weeks, and then at the end of the year we will do a post survey to be able to measure the growth. So this would be a third way that we can measure the success of the program.
Go back real quick.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just for the audience and for our board, these are not our actual students. These are sample students from the company, so these are made up students. We wouldn't publish something like this out in an open board meeting.
Yes, thank you. These are just made up names. Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Okay. I will turn it over to Ms. Sharina Clinton, Coordinator of Mentoring Services.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to share with you the events that we host throughout the school year for our mentors, mentees, partners, and supporters. Every October, we host our family kickoff at Central Academy of Excellence, and we invite all of our mentors to have an opportunity to meet their mentees, those who've not started their initiation process just yet. They have the opportunity to meet their families as well, and then hear from our superintendent. This year, we had some special guests, some mentees who were speakers at our program, because we wanted to make sure that the audience had a real life connection with the importance and the value of the students in the program. And then in April, we host our Mentor Appreciation Breakfast, where we have the opportunity to celebrate the achievements of our mentors, our partners, and our supporters. Last school year, we hosted the event at Kaufman Foundation, and it was a great celebration. We had tremendous feedback from our mentors. They loved it, and then they had some great takeaways as well, including a swag bag just to say thank you, and then a certificate to commemorate their mentor-mentee relationship last school year. Last year, we noticed that there was a gap in male mentors across the district, elementary, middle, and high school, and we really wanted to do something to fill that gap. We had a great need of students who requested mentors, as Dr. Davis mentioned earlier. Those permission slips were signed by parents and our guardians, but we just did not have the men to meet those needs. With the permission of some of our female mentors, we were able to do some male-female matches with younger male elementary students, but we wanted to make sure that we filled that gap. And so in September of this year, we hosted an event, The Conversation with Congressman Cleaver. It was a minority male recruitment event, tremendous turnout, over 200 individuals in the room that night. And out of that room, we had several men who were trained to become mentors, and they are still coming to us at this time. And we knew that this was going to be something not only of great importance for our males, mentees, excuse me, but we knew that it was going to be necessary for our students as well. Dr. Davis is going to come up to share the outcome of that event, the Males of Color event.
Thank you, Ms. Clinton. As you can see from our numbers, the goal that we set to increase the number of male mentors for this year has worked. We are very satisfied with the growth from last year to this year. So last school year, we had 48 male mentors, or about 28% of our mentors. If you see where we're at so far this year, we're up to 155 men, and that equates to 42% of our mentors are now male, so we can match many more young men with adult male supports. And so I want to thank the community and Dr. Bedell for his leadership and encouraging and helping us recruit men, as well as the board for continuing to recruit. Board Chair Robinson sends men our way, and we appreciate you. Keep on, everyone, lasso them in. All right. Any questions? All right, next, we will turn it over to Dr. Slade.
All right, and as Dr. Slade come up, one of the things that I did want to share with the board as we begin to go through this presentation, we've made it very clear, and Dr. Slade will talk about this, that every incident needs to be reported, and it needs to be reported accurately. And I think it's very important that anytime we do these presentations for the community, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, we want to be able to present the truth around where we are and then be able to talk to you all about the things we need to do. And we know that behavior issues have been an issue. It's been a long-standing issue, and it's something that we have to get support on. We have to have support from our parents and our community if we are to do the work that we need to do to give every single one of these kids a fair opportunity at being able to learn. And so this presentation will, while it's not pretty as far as I'm concerned around looking at our suspension rates, we do believe that the things that we are putting in place and implementing will help us to turn the curve on what we're doing to deal with some of the frustration that we're seeing that's being exhibited by some of our students. So Dr. Slade, we're ready for you to present.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bedell, for that introduction. I also want to thank the board members this evening and also our community members. As Dr. Bedell just stated, I'm going to just talk about our current suspension data and discipline issues. And this is basically from August to the end of October. And I'm going to talk about different behaviors and the way we're responding to the behaviors that our students exhibit. I want to just first talk about how behavior is reported in our system. It's reported regarding behavior events. These are some of the incidents and events that behaviors that students display. The most frequent behaviors, I would say, are disruptive behavior, fighting, violent behavior, disrespect, disorderly conduct, and brazen defiance. On the right on this chart, you see some of our responses to student behavior. One of the most common ones is out-of-school suspension, OSS, meaning the student is removed from the school site and normally spends his time or her time at home. In-school suspensions are also used, ISS, and when we use in-school suspension, the students removed from the classroom and sent to another area of the school where they still receive some type of instruction. In most of our schools, we do have classroom teachers full-time who provide instruction for the entire day when students have to report the in-school suspension. Detentions are also used. They take different forms. We have after-school detention that's used. lunch detention, meaning a student would go to lunch and instead of going to recess, they might go serve a detention. And in some of our buildings, we have Saturday detention, which is also effective, which means a student would go and report to their building on Saturday for 2 or 3 hours, and during that time, they have some type of instruction or conflict mediation or some other type of restorative practice implemented. We also have students who sometimes misbehave on our buses. All of our students ride the bus, so when students act out on the bus, one of the things that we do is we can, and this is the extreme incident, we suspend them for the whole year on the bus, very rare, or we could just suspend them for a day or a week riding the bus. Some other current behavior responses that we implement in our schools: parent conferences, parent phone calls, buddy rooms, that's at the elementary school level, and restorative action and justice practices, basically, which means that, say a student steals from another student, that student has to pay that student back and just explain to them why they did it and how it won't happen again. And as Dr. Bedell said, I'm just be up front, when we go through these charts for the different numbers for elementary, middle, and high school, our rates have gone up from school year 17, school year 18. Our rates are high this year, school year 19, from October and November. And one of the reasons that our rates are going up, I'm just gonna be up front, is that we did tell when we first started the year, a lot of our stakeholders stated, teachers and some of the parents we talked to, that some of the schools were kind of disorderly, so we wanted to set a strong tone to start the year off. And as a former principal at every level, elementary, middle, and high school, it's kind of good to start the year off because you can't really learn in disorder. So just looking at the elementary suspension rates at this point, if you look, our in-school suspension numbers are up at the elementary school level, and also our out-of-school suspension numbers are up at the elementary school level. But for you to be suspended at the elementary school level, for the most part, you have to do something that's very, very, very serious. Most minor infractions at the elementary school level handled by just talking to students, sending them to timeout, sending them to a buddy room, having a phone call, parent conference. And you'll see in our later charts that for you to be suspended at the elementary school level is normally serious. And something else that Dr. Bedell put into place this year is that for a student to receive a long-term suspension at the elementary or any level, he has to go through the assistant superintendent's office, which means I'm talking to principals every day about behavior. So if a child does something extreme, it has to be discussed and reviewed by me, and I have to approve it. This also reflects that our incidents at the elementary school level have gone up. And when I'm talking about incidents, I'm talking about what students actually do. And this is talking about the number of days that students have missed out of class as a result of suspensions. Students missed 578 days system-wide ISS at the elementary school level, and almost 1,000 days school system-wide out of school at the elementary school level. These are specific incidents that students were suspended for. If you look at this chart, all the situations for the most part are serious. We had 76 students suspended for assault, dangerous behavior 99, disruptive behavior. And one of the most common things that we deal with at the elementary school level is fighting. 190 students so far suspended. Again, as a former middle school principal, middle school is probably the most challenging to address student behavior. They're kind of immature at that age. They're also going through a lot of other transitions. And our middle school numbers are the highest of all the levels we deal with. You look at our ISS numbers for August to October at the middle school level, 1,072. And our out-of-school suspension incidents for middle school, 513. Our middle school suspensions, for the most part, make up almost half of our suspensions citywide. And these are the number of days, 1,000 for both ISS and OSS at the middle school level. Again, the incidents that students are being suspended for are serious. We are not suspending students for level 1 and level 2. It's just level 3 for the most part. Assault, chronic misconduct, disruptive behavior, and something at the middle school level, defiance of authority. Students who refuse to follow adults' directions the first or second time they're given. Our high school suspension, our ISS numbers have gone down because we're doing some restorative practices at the ISS level. I know one of our schools, Southeast, for instance, they have a full-blown restorative justice program, and their suspensions have actually gone down in that building because they're doing a lot of other things, but you see our numbers are still up for out of school compared to the same time last year. And the same with our days, our high school days, suspension days have gone up. At the same time, again, if you look at what students are doing, it's all serious things, fighting, disruptive behavior, chronic misconduct, which means that students may get suspended for cutting class or cussing the teacher out, and they come back to school and do the same thing. We put things in place and they continue to do it, and we still have to suspend. Okay, so one of the things that's different that we're trying to put in place, and we did some training for principals and assistant principals in the last 2 weeks. We met with one school today and started training teachers. We are not suspending students for Tier 1 offenses, which are minor offenses. A student may come to school and be out of uniform, come to school and go to class and sleep. In the past, and I was guilty of this myself, we would suspend students for not having their shirt tucked in. We're not doing that type of thing now. So for Tier 1 offenses, we are not suspending students. We're utilizing the interventions that are on the screen, parent conferences, timeout, we redirect behavior. We do a lot of reward systems, a lot of parties, a lot of restorative justice practices. So students are not being suspended for Tier 1. These are behaviors that normal students come in and partake in at some point during the school year. Tier 2 offenses are a little bit more serious. We're still trying not to remove students from the instructional setting for Tier 2. We're utilizing school resources, the problem-solving team. We have a lot of parent conferences, buddy rooms, our in-school resources that Ms. Tickner talked about. We're using that instead of sending students home on suspension. Now for Tier 3, which are serious offenses, students fighting, being totally out of control in buildings, we are still using out-of-school suspensions, but we're also doing a lot of home visits. We're doing team conferences. As a matter of fact, myself, the assistant superintendent team, we're going to homes every week. I've been to like 30 or 40 homes myself, trying to meet with parents to keep students from being kicked out of school. These are some of the possible explanations for why students are being suspended. Again, we wanted to start the year off strong and hold students accountable for serious infractions. We want students to understand if you come to school and you display inappropriate behavior, we are going to have some kind of consequence for you because, again, students cannot learn a disorder. The tier accountability system is new. We just started training on that, so we foresee our suspension rate going down as the months progress. The problem-solving team process is new. We've had training all year on that. Teachers are really, and schools are really doing it now, so we foresee that being successful. And violent behavior has increased in our neighborhoods. As you know, we've had some students who have been involved in shootings, and all that stuff spills into the schools. I've been on 2 home visits this year where I'm on the porch talking to a parent about what's going on in the school, and a fight has broken out in the street that we've witnessed while we're trying to correct and talk about student behavior. So the fact that students had to deal with some of this stuff at home, it does spill over into the school and it impacts their behavior. There's also, and Dr. Bedell talked about this, increased level of holding schools accountable for reporting what happens in terms of discipline. I know in the previous system I worked in, it was a big issue of reporting suspensions. It wasn't happening. So we're making sure that principals in schools report data accurately. Any questions?
Mr. Oates.
Yes.
So I got 2 questions, but I'll go with the easier one first. So on the last slide, you guys, on the slide previous to this one, was the tiered intervention. So I recall at the last meeting, at the last board meeting, when we were doing the 1.1 series, and we were talking about the academic interventions that have been put in place for schools. I'll represent Ms. Lewis since she's not here. She did ask a question around how are we doing that social, emotional support as under that same tiered umbrella, if you will. So being able to know what a tier 1 emotional support school is, and then schools that might require more, and how are we putting resources towards that? And I see Dr. Shepard's kind of itching to answer it, so if you don't.
Okay, so we have a variety of supports in our schools. I mean, we have so many supports. So based on what the student's offense is, we provide those supports. In most cases, even when the student is suspended, they still receive those academic supports. A lot of times students do act out because they are facing academic challenges in the classroom. So we hire reading interventionists, math intervention specialists, and they're providing that support to students also. But when you come in class and you do certain things, we do have to have some type of discipline.
Of course. I guess I was thinking more along that schools are systems. And so especially with some of our schools, especially we talk about neighborhood issues spilling over. I mean, most of our schools are neighborhood schools, and some of this stuff can be considered known knowns. Like, we know this school might face these issues because of whatever we have there. And so I was just trying to get a good idea of like, what is a tier 1?
So if you refer to slide number 34 in your packet, you will see that this is the tiered model that we use for social emotional support. Ms. Tickner presented that earlier, and those are supports that we provide. And there's also the eco map. If you recall, last school year we presented to you the eco maps, and those were maps that had that listed the supports that every school had, such as city year, communities in schools, whatever support they have that may be community related, or it could be district based. Those supports were listed on that eco map, and those are the supports that the schools actually use. So this is a general tiered model for intervention for what our social emotional department does. However, each school will have a different spin on this based on the supports and the resources that they have. There are some schools that have more resources than others, and that's where you think about tiered, and as far as how we fund schools, they have more of the different supports. Like, let's take, for instance, the Central Middle School. They actually have communities in schools, and they have city year, and they receive support from other outside agencies. All of those are supports that we actually support from a district level because the need there is greater, whereas another school may not have that in their pyramid of intervention. So this is at the pyramid for social emotional support, and it does align itself with our academic pyramid because kids tend to go back and forth. You know, I can't learn because I've got some of these needs. And so then once these needs are met, then I switch back over, and then I'm able to get the support I need academically, which is the reason why in most cases you see them side by side, because you'll see kids kind of migrate back and forth. But our schools provide supports based on what is needed. And some areas do have greater need. And we can provide you again with those eco maps, which Molly's team has helped our schools to create. What our challenge is and what our next steps are is to make sure that all of our schools know how to adequately use those eco maps. You have all of these resources. Now, how do you employ all of these resources to truly help children to be successful in their learning environment?
And we feel like it rotates from different school year to year. East, as an example, this has been a pretty quiet school for the most part, but we have apartments right around the corner from J.A. Rogers, and I actually drove through those apartments a couple of times just to kind of get an idea of what was going on. But that stuff spilled onto the campus, and it wasn't just the students. It was parents, it was grandparents, and so it is that when community things come onto our campus, and you look at a lot of these suspensions, a lot of it is fighting, you know, and I think that these are issues where at some point the district, we feel like our hands are tied, because if we have our parents involved in this stuff, it makes it even more difficult on us being able to really help coach our students around how you need to handle conflict. And we are serious about restorative justice and doing those things that the partnerships we have with the Center for Conflict for Resolution, but we know that there's a level of accountability around, once again, the community helping us with some of these issues, because if the kids see adults doing it, then they're gonna feel that it's just okay to do it, and that's the concern that we have right now.
And then I'll save my second question in case anybody else asks it first.
Oh, great. That's generous of you. Board Member Wolfsey?
Dr. Slade, I have a question around the, it doesn't matter which one it is, but this chart here could be whatever age. Is it right that I'm thinking that if you're written up, you could actually be written up for multiple things on this chart? Is that a correct assumption if I am written up for a behavior incident?
Normally a student would get written up for like one incident, like they might get written up for disruptive behavior, but that could be one class and they could go to another class and be written up for profane language. So that's something that's not uncommon in some of our more challenging schools, like some of the school that Dr. Shepard talked about. But normally you're just written up for one offense. And normally, again, you're not suspended just for being written up. We try to do a lot of things before we get to the point of doing some type of extreme discipline.
Okay, so my question, this kind of goes to the data person, really, because there's got to be patterns in some of this. I don't know if that's something we've thought about looking at, but I kind of go back to the 80-20 rule, where 80% of this may be coming from only a small portion of our students, but it's chronic, and is it predictive, and can we get ahead of it? I don't know if that's a model that has ever been looked at.
That rule is normally in place in most schools, where it's normally like 5% of your students commit 90% of your serious infractions. That's normally the rule in most schools.
And so knowing that's the rule, is there a way to, and I don't expect you to answer this now, I guess it's more hypothetical. We
normally provide support based on, we tier students based on needs. So normally those high flyer students, they'll have a variety of supports. And those are the students that work with City Year and some of these other agencies on a regular basis. And for students who would normally never act up and might just do one thing, we just might call a parent or take some type of recess from them. So again, we normally have our students tiered based on their behaviors like we tier everything else in the system.
Okay, great, thank you.
Board Member Manser?
So, I'll be cautious in not having so many questions, but I do. Can I just make just offer a thought before my question? One of the things I do get concerned about, I think this is important information to share, and I think, as to Dr. Bedell's point, it's important to just lay it out there and then examine this. And my concern is that the way in which it's presented and the notation of it, that a person who's not sitting in this presentation may believe that these numbers refer to individual students, and these are individual incidences. And so we have to find another way to report. So not to say mask it, but maybe have this, but there has to be a second way to report, because it could, on first blush, it is alarming even out of itself, but to help understand that this is not, there is widespread need and urgency, but this is not hundreds and hundreds of students that we're dealing with. So that's just a thought here. I think that's helpful for the public's understanding. I think we have to really make sure we all understand this, maybe to Ms. Wolfsey's point. So my question, I'll hone in on the in-school suspension. And my question is really, how is in-school suspension set up and resourced and equipped? Because ideally, throughout, you have all these classroom-based interventions. When you get to ISS, ideally that could be the place where you ultimately can maybe almost mitigate the majority of these issues, such that it is only almost at the most extensive level that we're getting to an out-of-school suspension. So who's staffing ISS? How is it?
So in most of our schools, ISS is staffed by a regular, in the model, most schools have a regular classroom teacher who assists with providing instruction. Normally, you have two different models. Sometimes a student will go to ISS just for that one class at the secondary level that they must say you had an issue with chemistry, you'll go to ISS for chemistry and you'll receive some type of chemistry instruction, normally like work from that class and somebody will support you. But in some schools, we do have where students are sent to ISS all day and they have their normal instructional materials available and somebody's there to assist them. What also happens in ISS, we have people who come in, counselors, support staff. They might do conflict mediation, some of the other restorative practices, some of that training and implementation takes place in ISS. So it's not like you just sit there. We're trying to restore students so they could go back into the classroom and be successful. So, and I will say most of the schools here do have ISS. That's something that's unique and that's new to me, which I think is great.
So what you're describing is it is a meaningful place where work occurs, but there's some other kinds of intervention and support that might address some of the issues, not just that, well, now I'm getting to do chemistry, but I'm doing it in ISS, but that there's somebody working with me to address some of my issues and disruption.
Okay, we do want to be transparent with you that our ISS model is not consistent from school to school, and that is something, that's an area that we need to work on. We realize that there are some things that we need to put into place, and so I brought Dr. Woodley up here because that is her current project right now as we work to standardize the process when children are pulled from class and placed in an ISS or behavior setting.
Okay, thank you. So we've been doing a deep data dive based on our discipline data, and we've trained our principals to really look at our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 students and identify what wraparound services that we need. One of the things that we have noticed is because some of our high need schools are in need of something different. So we're looking at implementing a recovery room type of model within our ISS. So we're looking at implementing things like art therapy, music therapy, de-escalation activities within the schools. We're going through and doing school-wide training on trauma-sensitive techniques. Calming stations within the classroom. So we're looking at doing a lot of different models that we're looking at rolling out come January to address some of these and see a decrease. But what I can say, based on our data, from September to October, our discipline data actually decreased. So you're looking at from August to October, we did see a decrease in our discipline data from September to October of about 40% decrease. So we are moving in the right direction, but we want to really truly have a intensive look at how we can make sure we're keeping more students inside the school versus out of school suspensions.
Board Member Hartsfield?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question on, I was looking at the behavior events for middle school, and I looked at this tardiness. Can you give some insight about this high spike? I didn't see one for elementary, but I did see one for the high school, and it was relatively low. But there was a humongous change from 17 to 19 and tardiness in middle school. What do you attribute that to?
Well, one of the things we looked at, and one of the major things we looked at when we first came in, we looked at our data, and what we found was, as Dr. Slade kind of mentioned, people actually documenting everything, because in order for us to really have a comprehensive look at what we need to do in our schools, we wanted to make sure that every school was putting in the system every infraction in order for us to make sure we had a comprehensive look. So a lot of the numbers we're looking at, we are contributing to people not actually doing the actual documentation within our Tyler system as deemed appropriate. And this year, we're mandating that everything is there so we can make sure that we know what's going on and how to address it appropriately.
Okay, well, if I look at that explanation then, and I look at middle school and high school, and if they're both documenting correctly, yet again, there's a great disparity between middle school tardiness and high school tardiness for this year. So I guess I just didn't know.
Yeah, and of course, you know, with middle school students, they're transitioning to a new model. So in elementary, you know, they're self-contained and usually in one class. Some schools go to the middle school model where they're switching classes and things of that nature. But when you go into that middle school, getting that transition to go from having 1 or 2 teachers to having 6 different teachers and things of that nature. So they're learning those systems and protocols and things of that nature. And so we're, you know, of course, trying to reacclimate them on those systems and making sure we're having bell-to-bell instruction to make sure that we have students that are, you know, getting to the places that they need to at a timely basis in order for us to make sure we are having that full, you know, attention for them for that bell-to-bell instruction.
But I do think that that's a great observation, Dr. Hartsfield, that I'll actually, as a superintendent, want to explore more and get a more thorough understanding of the 5 versus the 244, and honestly, what's the decision around what constitutes a tardy that should go into the system versus what doesn't go into the system? So I want to look into that one a little bit further.
Board Member Oates?
Oh, yes. So I think we were starting to go there under Mrs. Manser's questions. So, you know, I know the city, along with this school district, is engaging in some conversations around suspensions, you know, children being out of school. What are ways to mitigate that? And as I sit in some of those meetings and even just, you know, read articles, things like that, I begin to question, I guess, what is the exact purpose of an out-of-school suspension? Like, what does this district feel the purpose of out-of-school suspension is?
And that's a question that a lot of school systems are asking at this time. So one of the reasons that students are suspended out of school is when they do just something just so extreme that they have to be removed from the school for some level of time. I mean, I know there's some debate about if the effectiveness of it, but like if a student throws a chair across the room at the teacher, normally we have to suspend that student and remove them from the school for at least a few days because of the serious nature of the offense.
Right. So we'll remove them out of the school. I guess what's the process? Because I mean, it's been a while since I was in school, and I never had out-of-school suspension, but a few other different types. But you know, you would go sit in a classroom.
The system has a code of conduct that we follow, and
Sure.
based on the code of conduct, we decide on how many days. It's normally an established number of days for each offense.
Well, I guess, I mean, over that time period, so you send them out, you know, kids get into a fist fight, you sit them out for 3 days. Like, what happens over that 3 days? What happens when they come back? Is it just, you know, you go play PlayStation for 3 days and come back and...
So I do know when they come back, we have a reentry conference with the parent and the student. Okay. We establish some goals for the student. We try to make sure that the student doesn't repeat that same behavior. When they're normally home, we send work packets home, but we can't 100% say what happens when students are not in our building.
And I guess the final part of that I was thinking about was, I guess, what level of I guess, suspension autonomy, for lack of a better word, do principals have? And the reason why I think about this is just like, at elementary school, I see we have almost 200 fights. Now, I think fighting in general is a sign of, you know, emotional immaturity, but especially for 5 to 10-year-olds, like sometimes it's just not having those like social skills to be able to navigate that. And so I just don't know, like, you know, if 2 first graders hit each other over a toy, are we sending them home, you know, 2 or 3 days? And it's like that was probably, I don't know, it doesn't feel like.
So normally it has to be a serious fight at the elementary school level for us to suspend. We wouldn't suspend for like something minor. And for the most part, principals don't have autonomy to suspend over like 4 days unless they get approval from us.
Okay.
Can you break I'm glad you mentioned that you did a deep data dive. What's the race and gender of the individuals that are being suspended?
Of course, you know, our population of students that we serve, majority of them, 90% are Black or Hispanic. So when we look at our data, of course, most of our suspensions are coming from Black males.
You said Black males?
Correct.
Okay. And then I'm glad that you reported that 40%, there was a drop reduction, 40%.
From September to October.
Okay, well, in a 1 month time. Was that anticipated based on the interventions, and do you believe it's sustainable?
Yes, we are looking at, we have a laser focus on our discipline. Our principals, every month, we're tracking our data. We have done data consults with each one of our principals, looking at their suspension data. We have met with our schools, look at their problem-solving team, have their problem-solving team looked at their actual discipline data, and actually had some conversations about wraparound services. And our schools with higher suspension rates, we've put in implementation of additional supports, going in, doing additional professional learning around trauma-informed schools, doing additional training with our teachers. So we are very intentional about bringing those numbers down. So we will see a decrease.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last offering. You may already be doing this with our mentoring program that was just reported on, but hopefully there's some prioritization on the children that are experiencing some of these infractions to receive mentors.
Yes.
And that some of this information probably are sharing with potential mentors to say, this is some of the data and some of the opportunity for you to be able to contribute to the reduction of this happening.
Yes, we're definitely looking at our students. When we're looking at those tier 3 students, we're looking at providing every service that we can, including mentoring.
And I will tell you the most difficult part, and when we debriefed, Daryl Davis and I talked about some of the missed opportunities. We had difficulty just getting parents of many of these students that have these issues to do the paperwork. I mean, we can't pair them with a mentor, and so like I told Daryl, we have to go out, I'm sorry, Dr. Davis, we have to go out and we need to, if we have to try to knock on doors and do what we can to try to figure out how we can get some type of commitment and get the paperwork done, then that's what we have to do. And I think one of the things you heard from Dr. Slade, just in his short time of being here, he's made 30 to 40 home visits already, just as an assistant superintendent, trying to figure out what we can do to better serve our students.
And one of the things that I do want to, one of the modifications that we've made, I have now asked the assistant superintendents to begin looking weekly at the suspensions. We have certain schools that are actually increasing, and what we want to do is we want to look weekly at what type of incidents are happening and make sure that we're able to look at the wording of the discipline, and then work with the principals and coach the principals on, okay, what does this warrant? What were some steps that we could have taken prior to it getting to this point? So I think we have a lot of, some of this, we know that there are behaviors that they have to go home, but some of these we need to continue further coaching our leadership teams around what are some other options that we have with students who are participating in this type of behavior. A student throwing, paper across the room, yes, it can be disruptive, but is there something else that we could do? So we want to begin looking at the actual referrals to see what is being written up and what it is that we can personally do to decrease these. And that is something that we just spoke about last week, and I've asked them to begin looking weekly at our high-flying schools so that they can begin, as they go make their visits, coaching the principals around what are some other things that we can do as we continue to move through this. And as we stated earlier, we do know that there's an opportunity around our problem-solving teams. We are just now implementing those, and they're not perfect. And when you asked about the emerging, it's funny because we discussed that last week, and we talked about looking at all of our schools and determining who was emerging, who's proficient, and who's advancing. The truth is we don't have many that are advancing. And so our opportunity is around all of those schools that are emerging, what we can do to help them to become proficient so that we can see the decreases, and so that when we talk to them about some of these referrals, they actually have a process in place, and they have their own pyramid of interventions in their schools so that they can begin working with students more in a more intensive manner so that we can begin to see these go down. And as stated, though, what we've already done has decreased it as we continue to look at the problem-solving teams, as we continue to have assistant superintendents actually scrutinizing these referrals and coaching principals and leadership teams. We expect further decreases.
Evans, Hartsfield, and Mansur.
Wow. We all know that if a student is not in school, it's difficult for them to learn. And I only hope that all of this intervention and keeping students in class and in schools will result in academic achievement.
That's definitely our goal.
Board Member Hartsfield.
Yeah, this is a difficult subject for me to talk about out of school suspensions because, as you know, I know we want to keep all of our children in school if possible, but we do know that there are instances where a student presents either a danger to themselves or others, and therefore it is pertinent that we identify that person, especially if we do not have the resources available to assist them, even though sending them home does not help them.
I don't know how other districts have identified persons who are heading towards or on that edge, and what other options are there for students, because out-of-school suspension is something that has to be utilized. And I don't know what research we've done into understanding what are the best possible solutions for those students who we know are going to have to experience that. I don't know. I think given the multitude of issues that many of our students are dealing with, we do not have the resources to turn everyone around. I mean, you know. And so therefore there has to be a plan for when we know that we can't. Still, how can that child be serviced outside of our campus?
Yes, ma'am. That's when Dr. Shepherd kind of spoke about, that's the project that I'm working on.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a part of a team with student support. We're looking at our alternative ed placements, as well as looking at mental health and looking at whether or not some of our students can be served in our traditional ed. What are the profiles of students that need to be served in our alternative ed placement sites, as well as what community programs are available for students that may need psychoeducational services, educational services as well. So we are definitely doing that. We're actually doing a comprehensive needs assessment in our buildings of our high-flying students, looking at if they have medical diagnoses. We know mental health is a major issue in our community, and that's why, you know, Ms. Tigner talked about we train individuals to be trained in youth mental health first aid. So we're doing a comprehensive look at that and looking at a study of how we make sure we're able to provide the supports and build our alternative placement programs to be able to support certain level of students and identifying those students that can't be served and what are the resources in the community that which can partner with us. We're even looking at our charter partners to kind of see what services they're providing, so we can provide comparable services and not competitive services, so we can make sure we're meeting the needs of all our unique populations of students.
And let me just tag on, because you're absolutely right. The goal of really re-examining our alternative school is that part of what we have to do is rebrand it, and we don't want people to approach alternative schools through a deficit lens. I think we have to have different components within the school that will allow for us to service students that simply cannot function in a regular school environment, right? And not waiting until it's a situation where they're getting kicked out, because now it does then begin to look at it from a deficit lens. And we know that we're gonna have students who do that, but one of the things I said to Dr. Cadoba and Dr. Woodley was that we need to be able to have a system set up where we know that right now there's no way that this student is going to be able to thrive and survive in this environment. It's maybe too large, and we just don't have the intentional supports. So I have charged them with looking at how do we redesign Anderson and Knott's, and I also asked them to include in those discussions administrators from De La Salle, administrators from Genesis, because these are the other alternative schools that are out there, and how can we do a better job of servicing our students? Most school systems, you generally will see that 10% of your population, it don't matter what you do, it's just not, and I can't have 10% hold the other 90% hostage. I'm not gonna allow that to happen. And so we think that in our case, we have a little bit more than 10%. And that's just the reality of it. And so we need to make sure that we are going to set up a structure that's more proactive than us being reactive. And that is what I have charged our team to look at in working with our charter counterparts, Dr. Hartsfield.
And, you know, I really want to echo what my colleague, Dr. Hartsfield, said. And I think so where I will go because she's really hit on the themes that I think really matter. It is difficult to talk about because we want every child to be successful, but we also understand there's some level of intervention that is of a highest need. And so my question, it can be answered at some later point, but every year the board approves a number of contracts to local health and mental health providers, Cornerstones of Care, Maddie Rhodes, all kinds of organizations that are built around this kind of work. And so I hope, maybe there can be some point in time where you could discuss with us, or on a Friday update, how are you re-examining these contracts? Because some of these contracts are quite sizable on an annual basis. And sometimes I catch my breath when we're adopting these. I'd like to have a better understanding of how are we assessing those contracts? What are those services that we're gaining? And is it being structured in a way that helps us address some of the children's needs that are of that highest level of urgency? Because what I can see, we are trying to adopt all kinds of internal structures, but there are at some points in time where we need that level of expertise externally, and I'm just hoping that the contracts that we have in place for those kinds of services are set up in a way that we are really reaping maximum benefit for that.
We'll definitely provide an update on that.
I have to jump in here for the counter, given some of the comments. So how does implicit bias play a role in explicit racism and accountability for that in this narrative? So as you guys are investigating and uncovering and learning about the population, have you found implicit bias within our system or situations of oppression, and how do we hold people accountable for those things?
Well, I can tell you what we have done. We have not looked at that per se when we looked at the data, but what we have done is drill down to the individual level, so we know what teachers are referring students at what schools and what grade levels and things of that nature. So we're drilling down the data and having conversations around where the referrals are coming from, the time of day that it's coming, what teachers are referring. So we're able to drill that down and bring that back to the, because sometimes when you are actually in the base level, you can't get actually up on the balcony to kind of look and kind of see what's going on. So we're actually being able to dig deeper to kind of look at that. And in individual schools, we're having conversations about relating to students of poverty, understanding the population that we're serving, and things of that nature. So we're addressing some of those issues in some of our high-flying schools as well.
I have to chime in because I will tell you that implicit bias absolutely plays a role in what's happening. And I think it's very clear if you heard my transcripts in the teacher town hall meeting, just around some of the things that we received on the survey and what teachers were saying about why they didn't want to go and visit. And it's not all, it's a very small population, but the fact that if a kid is in front of somebody with that type of mentality, they don't have a fighting chance. And that's just the reality of it. So I know that that's a factor. I think you can see what's happening out in Lee Summit. It's been very difficult. I think we've had difficulties even here, even though the board has moved forward with an equity policy and embracing this tiered model to support. We've tried to roll out some equity training, and I think there's some things that we as an administration working with people who come in here and train, we have to also make sure that we're making sure that we're giving them full context and making sure that we don't leave a can of worms open that we can't close, because it is a very uncomfortable conversation to talk about. And that's the thing I've been talking about from day one. People want to act as if this stuff doesn't exist in this city, and it does. And it plays out oftentimes in what happens inside of our schoolhouse.
And one of our approaches, One of our approaches has been to make sure that we started with the central office. We had training this summer on implicit bias, and we brought a trainer in, and we did it, it was supposed to be done by department. However, because of summer vacations, sometimes departments got mixed up, and we brought people in and we discussed it. And so we know that we have lots more work to do around that area. We know that implicit bias does play a major part. I mean, we have students who look one way, and we have teachers who look another way, who may come from a different background or a different setting. And so for us, we know that it is imperative that we continue to move forward. We have received a grant from Kaufman to do more work on implicit bias. And so as we continue to launch, we're going to begin working with our curriculum department, because a lot of this is around how presenting culturally relevant pedagogy. And so as we continue to march forward in the area of implicit bias, we believe that as we use this contract and we utilize these funds, that we'll be able to bring some more people on to help us, to help our teachers, to help our principals. Principals were trained as well, and we know there's still more training to give. So I do want you to know that we are aware and we are on it and we are working on it, but know that it is going to be a process. It's going to be a process to get people to feel comfortable talking about it, and once there is some ownership, then we can begin to see change.
Yeah, and I know we have to move on to we have another presentation, but as we talk about castaways in terms of our children, I think that we have to have a balanced conversation about the other side of the adult equation. And so while I won't hold you to the accountability piece tonight, as we bring this conversation up and forward, it has to be balanced in accountability for when there is implicit bias and oppression that happens in our system by adults to children.
Yes, we do agree with that.
Thank you. Right, final presentation of the night. Dr. Sanders, we want to welcome you up, and Ms. Doyle, I don't know if you were going to present, but on 1.3.3.
So this will be our final presentation for the night.
Good evening, Board Chair Robinson, Dr. Bedell, and board members. Thank you for having us this evening. Also, my associate ADs here as well. Let me get to our presentation. Okay. This slide is one of the same slides that you saw last year. Kind of gives you a listing of what we currently have in our offerings from the fall, winter, and spring. Coming to your attention regarding the girls' tennis team, we've added 2 tennis teams this year, one at East and one at Northeast. Mr. Hinojosa was a college tennis person, so he definitely wanted it at his school. So that was one of the driving forces for having tennis.
Can he play?
He says he can, sir. So, but we saw some tremendously good numbers coming out of the 2 tennis programs. We had a combined from the 2 programs around 40 to 49 young ladies participated in tennis this fall. This kind of gives you a breakdown of where we're at, male to female ratio over the past 3 years. Our numbers were increasing this year because of other programs. As you can see, our trends are moving forward and moving upward from when we first started tracking this 4 years ago to our current day. As you can see, our numbers are continually making an upward surge. Also, one other thing I was going to mention, we left the stadium lights on, we put up the tent, so if the board members kind of want to see what it looks like on a Friday night, you can kind of go out and get the ambiance of what we call the bear cave looks like on a Friday night. This kind of breaks it down so you can see the numbers of the schools individually, and the numbers are above them of what it comes out to be. Jeez, I'm sorry. Currently, we had a total increase of our high school numbers of 111 more students participating in our fall sports than we did in the previous year. Our middle school numbers, as you can tell, we had a really nice upswing in our middle school. First off, we got in our upswing in our middle school by adding Paseo sports this fall. We had a total of 98 more students at Paseo participating in fall sports. So that's why we see the big upturn. Give you an example of Paseo. We had like 10 or 12 girls running cross country. We also had cheerleading and things that those young folks hadn't had the opportunities. So that was also a very nice trend for us as well.
I will say this, when you bring in 160 or 70 seventh graders, I think it forced us to make sure that we had to offer athletics because we know with middle schoolers, we need them to be productively involved in their school lives, and that will prepare them as they matriculate into high school to continue to do that. So we didn't have a choice.
I'm sorry, I keep going around. Basically, right now, compared to last year, we had 185 total students in the fall. Compared to this year, an increase of 176 students increase in middle school sports. So for a total combined effort of this year, middle school and high schools, we had an additional 287 students participate in our sports programs. I'm really excited about this group of young men, our middle schoolers. Prior to this year, Academy Lafayette has always won the middle school soccer championship. Now, most of these young men will be divided between, as they matriculate into the high school level, they'll either go to East or Northeast. But they tied the regular season championship, and they also won the conference championship. Dr. Bedell, we had special t-shirts, and the young men want you to come over to the middle school to take a picture with them, with their trophies, and give you one of their championship shirts.
Sure.
Any questions, folks?
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And I'd like to also say one other thing. The East alumni, when they came from when we dedicated the stadium, wanted to make sure that I told you guys, thank you so much. They were excited, they were taking pictures. It was a fantastic evening. And thank you so much for supporting your athletic programs on both the high school and middle school level. Thank you.
And thank you. Please send our apologies too. We really tried to incorporate that this evening and we could not incorporate that into our schedule, but thank you so much.
We will let you know when the Lion Den comes on next spring.
Okay.
All right, and then the final item from the administration is our next business meeting items. We will present to the board for approval and acceptance 2017-18 audit report, Lincoln Middle School change orders, and then Lincoln Prep Athletic Field contracts and bids.
So please be looking for those items. Thank you so much for your patience and attentiveness this evening. I want to thank our staff for the thorough presentations. And if there's nothing else to come before the body, do you have an announcement?
No.
Okay.
I want to say thank you to East High's principal for hosting us.
Okay, I saw you holding up.
Thank you, sir.
Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I should have done.
Okay.
It's 19.
Taking Tootsie Roll.